The day I confirmed my mate at 20, I was stunned to find the moon goddess had arranged 2 mates for me. Alpha Amos put their photos in front of me. 2 heirs to the pack's alpha line. One was the proud and powerful Glen Wolf, the elder brother, famed as the strongest werewolf in the north. The other was the quiet and mysterious Ryan Wolf, the younger brother everyone whispered about because he still hadn't awakened his wolf. They called him a useless runt. This is the moon goddess's decree, Alpha Amos said solemnly. Whoever you choose will be your mate and the next alpha of the pack. Without hesitating, I chose the younger brother Ryan. My choice shocked everyone. After all, everyone knew I was madly in love with Glen, and that I would only ever marry him. However, they did not know the truth. In my last life, I'd chosen Glen, only to discover he was having an affair with his secretary, Fawn Albertson. Alpha Amos flew into a rage and banished Fawn from the pack. Glen, convinced I had betrayed him behind his back, turned his hatred on me. From then on, he deliberately made a show of being intimate with his mistresses in front of me, forcing me to taste the pain of the mate bond. I was tormented and humiliated by those mistresses, until I felt less than dirt. When my unborn pup was poisoned by one of them and died, I couldn't take it any longer. I chose to end my life. I never expected the moon goddess to give me a second chance. This time, I resolved to step aside, so that Glen could be happy with Fawn. However, he had also been sent back in time to relive his life, and instead of calm he broke down. I just stepped out of the council chamber when I ran straight into Glen Wolf and his gaggle of bootlickers. The moment they saw me, the young werewolves' faces went sly. They closed in, forming a ring of ridicule. Well, if it isn't Iris. Are you looking for Glen again? You even came all the way to the council hall to beg him, huh? I didn't know you could stoop so low. Glen glanced at me with that same half-contempt and half-smug satisfaction look on his face. What did you tell Alpha Amos? How could the moon goddess possibly name 2 mates at once? This has to be another stunt to force me to claim you, right? Your imagination is impressive. He leaned in, voice cold and amused. Spare me. Even if the moon goddess stripped you off and put you in my bed, I'd still hesitate before I marked you. Beg anyone you like. It won't change a thing. His scorn cut the same way it had in my last life. My love, my loyalty, and my sacrifices were worthless in his eyes. I swallowed the sharp pain, and forced my voice steady. Alpha Amos summoned me. He said he'll personally host tomorrow's birthday celebration for me. At that, the men behind Glen froze. He said what? Alpha Amos himself is hosting it? For her. Of course, they were stunned. Alpha Amos carried weight no one questioned. He never meddled in trivial matters. He only stepped in for grave things such as war, succession, and death. For him to personally host my birthday meant unprecedented favor. They all remembered the rumors Alpha Amos had let slip about the moon goddess's decree. I, Iris, had been named with 2 mates, and whoever I chose would inherit the alpha seat of the Silver Moon Pack. Shock gave way to a wave of brown-nosing smiles aimed at Glen. Glen, Iris loves you. Your alpha seat's secure. Congratulations, Glen. Don't forget us when you take the throne. Glen shot me a condescending look, a half-smile playing at his mouth. Congratulations to you, Iris. After all these years pursuing me, your wish is finally coming true. He spread his hands theatrically. You must be over the moon, right? Then he lifted his chin and announced to everyone present. But before we become mates, there are terms I need to make clear. Even if we become mates, you won't have any say in my private life. We'll block each other's mind link and go our own ways. Promise me that, and I might consider claiming you. My heart went cold. This wasn't merely arrogance. This was sacrilege. Defying the moon goddess's will, and mocking the sanctity of the mate Bondi felt a wave of disgust. How could someone I once adored speak like that? A sharp clack of heels cut across the corridor. Glen's secretary, Fawn Albertson, appeared holding a stack of documents, her face a little pale. Glen immediately went up to her, and his tone instantly changed to a sudden warmth I had never heard from me. Why are you here if you're sick? Didn't I tell you to rest? Fawn managed a fragile smile and said weakly, This urgent document needs your signature. I was going to call, but I didn't want Iris to misunderstand. She's always so sensitive about me, so I came in person. Then she coughed, covering her mouth. Glenn shot me an accusing look. You always jump to conclusions, making every female werewolf in the world your enemy. Your jealousy is exhausting. After that, he took the folder from Fawn tenderly and slipped his hand into hers. The intimate gesture was deliberate, like they were meant to be. Before he left with her, he turned back and said to me, "Think about what I said. If you don't blame me for being even harsher than last time." Last time? My heart lurched. Could he have been reborn too? No wonder his voice sounded so certain. However, this time, it wouldn't go the way he expected. I would never choose Glenn again. On the day of my birthday party, everyone from the pack had turned up, the place loud and alive. Then Glenn arrived late, arm in arm with Fawn. Fawn's lips were swollen and red, and Glenn had a few suggestive marks on his neck. Their intimacy drew whistles and jeers from the crowd. "Our future alpha sure is energetic," someone called. Fawn gave a coy, practiced smile while Glenn casually draped his arm around her shoulders. In my last life, I probably would have fainted on the spot. This time, I simply glanced at them, cool and measured, before returning to my friends and taking a small sip of water as if nothing had happened. Glenn caught my look. Instinctively, he stepped forward to shield Fawn, waiting for the angry questions and tears he expected from me. However, they never came. Annoyed that I wasn't reacting the way he was expecting, he flashed me a mocking smile and walked over. "Iris," he said, "you're putting on a show of generosity to make me like you more, aren't you?" He offered his hand smugly. "Since it's your birthday, I'll humor you. Come dance the first dance with me." Before I could respond, Fawn beat me to it and took his hand. In a soft voice she said, "Glenn, Iris never really dances well, does she? If she steps on your foot in front of everyone, that would be embarrassing." Then she turned to me with a fake, apologetic smile. "I used to be the one to dance the first dance with Glenn at balls. Let me do it this time, so you don't get nervous." Glenn let her take his hand without a second thought. "Fine. Saves me the trouble," he said, casually indifferent. I watched the little performance in silence, then started to move away to find a quiet corner to sit. However, I'd only taken 2 steps when a voice stopped me from behind. "Stop right there. Iris, who were you going to see?" Glenn had grabbed my wrist so hard that it hurt. His grip was impossible to ignore. "What? You put on a big-hearted act and then test me behind my back? I knew it. You're jealous. Of course you'd be angry. Remember, you're mine. If I won't dance with you, then no one else will." I wrenched my arm free and stared at him coldly. "Glenn, show some respect. Who I dance with is my business." He laughed again, but there was a threatening edge to it. "Iris, you've always dreamed of being my mate and wanted me to be yours. And now you tell me I don't get a say? Don't provoke me, little one. If we become mates, I'll make you regret crossing me today." "Who said I was going to choose you?" I cut him off, each word deliberate. For a heartbeat, the whole room held its breath. Then laughter erupted, sharp and cruel. Fawn joined in, but her smile hid something nastier. "Iris, don't be ridiculous. If you're not choosing Glenn, are you going to pick that useless Ryan, who still hasn't awakened his wolf? If he hasn't awakened, he can't sire pup. Marry him and you'll be a maiden forever." Everyone's eyes were on me, waiting for my answer. I parted my lips, ready to announce that my chosen mate was Ryan. However, Alpha Amos's words echoed in my mind. "If you've chosen Ryan, I'll respect that, but don't reveal it just yet. The matter of who inherits the Alpha's position must be handled with extreme care." I understood the deeper meaning behind his warning. My choice wasn't just about picking a mate for myself. It was about appointing the next leader of the pack. This decision carried immense weight. Every word I spoke could plunge the pack into division and chaos. Alpha Amos was on his way here, so I forced myself to hold back and stay silent. Whispers broke out around me. "Why isn't she saying anything? She can't even answer, huh? Truth is, she just wants to cling to Glenn." I thought maybe she'd finally have the guts to reject him, but nope. Never trust someone whose brain's fried by love. "All right, that's enough." Fawn cut in with false concern. Iris is just trying to provoke Glenn into marking her early. She's desperate, that's all, and it's understandable. Laughter erupted around us, but Fawn wasn't finished. She leaned close and whispered in my ear, "You can't win against me. See this?" From my brooch to my heels, every piece was a gift from Glenn. "I heard you once begged him for just a jacket, but he called you a freak instead. Am I remembering that right?" She wasn't lying. That memory was deeply ingrained in my mind. Back then, I was obsessed with Glenn's scent, so obsessed it bordered on madness. One winter, he casually tossed me a cloak for warmth, and I couldn't resist burying my face in it to breathe him in until he caught me. His eyes went wide with disgust, and he yanked the cloak away, throwing it straight into the trash. Freak. That word had crushed me, leaving me frozen as tears welled up but never fell. I could only stammer sorry, over and over again. However, that was in my past life. I'd died once already. This time, I refused to harbor any illusions about Glenn. "I never planned on competing with you," I muttered, frowning impatiently as I tried to step past her. The next second, the sharp sound of tearing fabric pierced the air, and gasps filled the room. Fawn's dress had split at the neckline, bearing a swath of pale skin. She collapsed to the ground, covering herself as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Iris, I know you don't like me, but how could you rip my clothes in front of everyone?" Every gaze turned on me, filled with suspicion and contempt. "Iris, what the hell did you do?" Glenn's glare cut through me like a blade. "To humiliate Fawn in front of everyone, you're beyond cruel." I met his burning eyes and said calmly, "I didn't do it." Fawn trembled as she threw herself into his arms, sobbing. "I know Iris has always disliked me, but I never thought she'd stoop this low." He held her protectively, comforting her openly, while his coldness toward me left the cruelest contrast for all to see. I looked at them, my lips twisting into a hoarse laugh. "I never thought you'd resort to something this dirty just to frame me." Smack! The slap came without warning, my cheek burning instantly. Glenn's hand was still raised, his voice sharp with fury. "Don't you dare talk about Fawn like that. Apologize to her." The slap whipped my face to the side, and a metallic taste of blood spread at the corner of my mouth. My wolf roared inside me, desperate to fight back, but I used every ounce of strength to hold her down. This was the birthday banquet Alpha Amos had prepared for me. If I lost control now, I would ruin everything. When my cold, unflinching gaze met Glenn's, he froze. A flicker of unease flashed across his face. He almost stepped toward me, but Fawn clung to his arm with all her strength. "Glenn," she pressed her half-bare chest against him. "This is the dress you gave me. This is my first time wearing it, and it was torn apart by a jealous werewolf." Guests around us began whispering, pointing their fingers at me. "So that's Iris? To stoop so low as to rip another werewolf's dress in public, I'd better stay far away from her. She can't even tolerate a secretary? What a petty heart. And someone like her is blessed by the moon goddess? She's lying, surely." The last trace of warmth vanished from Glenn's eyes. He glared at me coldly. "Apologize. Then take off your dress and give it to Fawn. You need to take responsibility for what you've done." His sycophants howled and jeered. "Great idea, Glenn. Teach this vile wolf a lesson she'll never forget." "Did you hear that, Iris? Hurry up and hand your dress over to Fawn." I clutched my dress, retreating backward. "Why should I? I never even touched her." "If she doesn't want to undress, help her," Fawn sneered, malice flashing in her eyes. "Iris, you went too far this time. If no one teaches you a lesson, you'll keep bullying others. I'll strip you bare right here and now, so you'll learn your place." She ordered people to pin me down before she lunged at my dress, ripping at it viciously. "No. Stop." My nails dug deep into the fabric. As I fought with all my strength, pain shooting through my fingers with every tug. Yet the fabric still slipped from my grip. The room seemed to shrink around me, filled with the scornful stares of every guest. Just as despair was about to swallow me whole, an aged voice thundered through the hall. "Enough! What is all this commotion?" Glenn barked at Fawn to stop, and then yanked me to my feet. He brushed the dust from my shoulders, as if nothing had happened. "All right, you've learned your lesson now, haven't you? My grandfather's here. He's about to announce who the next alpha will be." Don't you dare embarrass me again. I clutched my tattered dress, trembling, nearly biting through my own lip. The crowd parted as Alpha Amos walked in, leaning on his staff, with Ryan Wolf supporting him. Only then did people realize that Ryan, the boy once scorned as useless for never awakening his wolf, had grown tall and commanding, with strikingly handsome features. The moment Ryan saw my disheveled state, he strode forward, pulled off his coat, and draped it gently over me. He brushed his hand over my swollen cheek and asked in a low voice, "What happened to you?" I barely got a word out before Glenn cut me off. "Grandfather, you're finally here. I'm ready to bond with Iris as my mate. Hurry and announce me as the new Alpha." He puffed out his chest proudly, as if he could already see himself crowned. However, Alpha Amos ignored him. His gaze swept the hall and landed squarely on me. "What happened here?" he questioned. The crowd rushed to explain, each adding fuel to the fire. Iris's lies were exposed, and Fawn tried to cover for her. But instead of being grateful, she tore Fawn's dress. When we told her to apologize, she turned it around and blamed Fawn instead. She must be jealous that Glenn treats Fawn well, but they're just co-workers. Iris is far too petty. Alpha Amos listened in silence and then slammed his staff against the floor. The thunderous crack echoed like a storm. Nonsense. Iris never even chose Glenn as her mate. Why would she be jealous of Fawn? "Stop joking, grandfather." Glenn chuckled, his voice full of confidence. "How could Iris not choose me? Everyone in the pack knows she's madly in love with me." I forced myself to recover from the humiliation, and lifted my head. Slowly and clearly I declared, "You heard right. Ryan is the mate I've chosen." The room instantly erupted into chaos. Then, as Glenn's smile froze in place, the hall fell deathly silent. Everyone stared at me in shock. My choice had left them dumbfounded. His smile cracked, draining the color from his face until it was nothing but pale humiliation. He looked at me as if I were a stranger. "Iris, do you even know what you're saying?" His voice was hoarse, trembling as he tried to keep his composure. "Don't joke like this. It isn't funny." I ignored him. Instead, I turned to Alpha Amos and bowed slightly. "I've made my choice." Alpha Amos gave a small nod, and in his eyes, there was even a hint of approval. That subtle reaction shattered Glenn's last defense. He snapped, roaring, "Impossible! You love me. In the last life, you chose me. Iris, look at me." He lurched forward, desperate to grab me, but someone moved faster. Ryan stepped in front of me calmly, shielding me completely. His fingers slid into mine, gripping tightly, intertwining our hands in a gesture that left no room for doubt. He looked straight at his brother, his eyes cold. "Iris has chosen. From now on, she's my Luna. Show some respect." Among the crowd, Fawn's face turned just as pale as Glenn's. She stared at him, stunned by his downfall, and instinctively took 2 steps back. "Get out of my way." Glenn's voice broke with rage and jealousy as he jabbed a finger at his brother. "You're a useless nobody who hasn't even awakened your wolf. What right do you have to steal her from me?" "Enough." Alpha Amos's voice rang out, aged yet commanding. 2 towering Gamma guards immediately stepped forward, seizing Glenn by the arms, one on each side, dragging him back as he thrashed. "Let me go. Do you know who I am? Iris, you'll regret this. I swear you will regret it." His shouts echoed and faded as the guards dragged him away. Fawn too slunk off quietly, defeated. With the uproar finally over, Alpha Amos descended from the platform and placed the Alpha's scepter, the symbol of authority, into Ryan's hands. When the ceremony ended, Alpha Amos's Beta approached us with a thick folder in hand. He offered it to me respectfully. "This is from Alpha Amos," he said. "The core assets of the pack, along with everything you are entitled to as Luna, are inside." The bonfire celebration was still in full swing, and the noise and laughter were giving me a headache. I turned, looking for a quiet corner, and accidentally walked straight into a solid embrace. A faint, musky scent enveloped me. It was Ryan. Suddenly, tears welled up in my eyes. I thought of the last life. After I killed myself from unbearable humiliation, my soul hovered over the pack, and I saw the scene of Ryan taking revenge for me. He had stormed Glenn's alpha succession ceremony alone, and in front of everyone, thrown down the evidence of Glenn's collusion with that female werewolf. You killed your unborn pup with her lies. You killed your Luna. He had lost control for the first time. You're unfit to be alpha. In the end, he personally put Glenn in the pack's dungeon and won me justice. I was stunned by what he did, but one thing I couldn't understand was why a silent, taciturn werewolf would go so far for me. After being sent back in time, one voice echoed in my head more clearly than anything else. Choose him and I wouldn't regret it. Halfway through the feast, Alpha Amos called Ryan to the main table and had him sit at his side. The message was clear to the whole pack. Ryan was the chosen heir. Ryan didn't hesitate. In the complicated stares of the crowd, he took his seat calmly. Someone stumbled in, reeking of alcohol. It was Glenn. He lunged to the main table and pleaded in a humiliating, drunken tone. Father, you can't let them mate. You can't give the alpha seat to him. Alpha Amos looked at Glenn in his drunken state, and his face darkened. Take him away. Don't disgrace us here. Glenn refused to leave. He turned to me, eyes blazing. Iris is mine. We grew up together, and we love each other. You can't tear us apart. Alpha Amos looked at me, and I met Glenn's gaze with calm. Yes, I admitted. I once loved you, and I wanted no one but you. But that's the past. Now I have my own mate, so please stop harassing me. The one you love is Fawn. I'm stepping aside for you. Aren't you supposed to be happy? Glenn's face twisted as if I'd struck him. Then he let out a strange laugh. So you're jealous, aren't you? You're just using Ryan to get at me because you're still hurt I slapped you for Fawn. I stared expressionlessly at him, partly amused and partly pitying. Iris, you can't mate with someone else. You can only love me. He roared and lunged for me recklessly. He didn't get to touch me before a powerful force pushed him back with the sickening crack of bone shifting. Ryan's body grew in an instant. He transformed into a massive wolf that planted itself between Glenn and me, shielding me with its bulk. Those crimson wolf eyes locked onto Glenn, and a low, menacing growl rolled from the beast's throat. By the moon goddess, a chorus of gasps rippled through the crowd. Is that Ryan? But didn't he fail to awaken his wolf? What a powerful wolf. This is alpha-level strength. Glenn staggered back, his drunken fury replaced by outright terror. He stared at the great wolf, lips trembling, unable to form a word. How could the brother he had always scorned as useless possess such overwhelming power? Alpha Amos's staff slammed the ground with a heavy thud, his voice thunderous. You disgrace. The crowd fell silent. From today on, you are not to leave the house. Stay inside and reflect on yourself. After the ceremony, the crowd thinned until only whispers drifted through the camp. Ryan led me to the pack's sacred place, Moon Lake, where silver moonlight lay across the water, scattering like a dream. He was quiet for a long time before he finally spoke, his voice threaded with a slight nervousness. If you regret this, you can still change your mind. I can tell Alpha Amos to cancel our bond ceremony. I looked at him, surprised. In his eyes, I saw fierce love and a raw fear of losing me. I shook my head and squeezed his hand, steady. I don't regret it. Why? He asked softly. I know Glenn has always been the one you love. Because I had a very long dream. I stared into his eyes and told him a small, kind lie to explain my past life. In that dream, my life fell into endless darkness. At the last moment, you risked everything to save me. When I woke up, I promised myself the one I wanted would be you. Slowly the worry in his eyes faded and was replaced by something like uncontained joy. He murmured, as if savoring the words. I see. He reached into his coat and took out a delicate box. Inside was a moonstone ring, simple and beautiful. He took my hand with solemn care, and slipped the ring onto my ring finger. The metal felt cool at first, and the moonstone glowed softly under the moon. Then, with no warning, he bent and bit my neck gently. A sharp sting gave way to warmth that spread through me. I could feel a powerful presence envelope us both, and an invisible bond formed between us. It was the mate bond, as witnessed by the moon goddess, a promise of never parting. I lifted the pendant my mother had left me, a small laurel carved charm, and put it around his neck with my own hands. This is the most important thing I have, I whispered. Now I give it to you. He cupped the pendant to his chest preciously, and looked at me with so much love I almost melted. Iris, by the moon goddess above, I swear I will never fail you. Back home, still floating on the afterglow, I barely had time to collect myself before Fawn showed up at the door. She glared at me, her voice sharp. Iris, you sure have the nerve, using Ryan to make Glenn jealous like that. But too bad your plan failed. Glenn doesn't care. Ryan is a worthless kid who hasn't even awakened his wolf. She had clearly left early and missed what had happened later. She laughed as if she'd already seen my future ruin. Just then a figure burst into the yard. Glenn shoved Fawn aside and stared at me, eyes rimmed red. Neighbors poked their heads out at the commotion to watch. Under everyone's gaze, Glenn dropped to one knee in front of me with a heavy thud. From his pocket, he produced an enormous diamond ring and held it high. Iris, he called, be my mate. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. What are you on about? I said coolly, staring at him. Isn't Fawn the one you love? How can you already be tired of her? He scrambled to his feet and reached for my hand, but Fawn grabbed him hard and wouldn't let go. Glenn, how can you do this to me? Fawn's tears fell like beads on a broken string. You promised that after Iris helped you take the alpha position, you'd mark me. You said I'd be your Luna. Shut up. Glenn snapped, struck in a sore spot, and turned, slapping her in the face. As the smack rang out, the neighbors watching us all sucked in a breath. 5 finger-shaped prints bloomed across Fawn's cheek. She covered her face in shock, utterly stunned. You tramp. This is all your seduction. Glenn shoved every blame onto her. If it weren't for you, Iris wouldn't have chosen someone else. You scheming wolf, do you think you deserve to be my Luna? To make it worse, and to sever any ties between them, he spat a secret that could destroy her. Look at yourself. You're a worthless, low-blood Omega. You don't even deserve to shine my shoes, yet you dare dream of being my mate. The words low blood exploded through the crowd like thunder. Everyone turned on Fawn with contempt. Their looks cut like blades. Her face went deathly white. Under the whispers and pointing fingers, she lost it. I'm not worthless, I'm not, she mumbled, her eyes empty, and then she stumbled away. Glenn didn't even glance at her. His gaze never left me. Iris, you see? I've severed ties with her. No one will bother us again. Give me another chance, please. I pulled my wrist free from his crushing grip. Glenn, have some decency. I'm about to become your brother's Luna. Maybe you think you were born to get everything you want, that you can have anything you reach for. I said the words calmly. But there's one thing you'll never get. He asked urgently. What? A cure for regret. I looked at him and spoke each word slowly. There's no turning back. Then I turned away, ignored him, and went back inside, closing the door tight behind me. My bond ceremony with Ryan was set to take place on Moon Goddess Mountain, the most sacred place in the pack. As the car moved steadily up the winding mountain road, I leaned against Ryan's shoulder, my heart full of joy and anticipation for the future. Suddenly, the brakes screeched, and the car lurched to a stop. Looking ahead, I saw a lone figure in a white suit standing in the middle of the road. It was Glenn. To think he had actually come to stop us on the very day of my bond ceremony with Ryan. He was truly insane. I'll handle this. Ryan's gaze turned cold. Stay in the car. Don't be afraid. However, I grabbed his hand instead. We're mates. Whatever comes, we should face it together. His eyes softened at my words and he nodded. With that, we stepped out of the car together, standing hand in hand in front of Glenn. Iris, come with me. His bloodshot eyes burned with desperation. The moon goddess chose you and me. You were supposed to be mine. I found his reasoning utterly ridiculous. The moon goddess had given me the right to choose, and I had made my choice. Glenn, I think I've made myself very clear, I said firmly. Today is my bond ceremony with Ryan. If you're here to witness it, you're welcome. But if you're here to pick a fight, don't blame us for being rude. Iris, how can you treat me so coldly? It's me. You loved me, didn't you? His eyes grew wild as I stood unmoved. We're the ones who should be together. As long as you die, we can start over again. After that, his face twisted with madness, and he lunged at me. A flash of silver gleamed in his hand. It was a silver dagger, deadly to werewolves. Ryan moved in front of me, shielding me with his body. Without hesitation, he grabbed the blade with his bare hand. Blood dripped down between his fingers, sizzling against his burning skin as the wound smoked with the scent of charred flesh. "Are you okay?" I caught his bleeding hand, my heart aching and my voice trembling. "Why would you do something so stupid?" Seeing the raw concern in my eyes, Glenn's expression twisted further into madness. "You used to only care for me," he muttered. "Now you shed tears for someone else?" I turned my head, meeting his gaze with unwavering resolve. "Ryan is my fated mate. If I don't care for him, who else should I care for? You." By then, the Gamma guards had rushed forward. They pinned the frenzied Glenn to the ground. From nowhere, Fawn came running, clutching him as she wept bitterly. "Glenn, let's just go, please, don't do this anymore." However, he ignored her completely. His eyes, full of desperate pleading, remained fixed on me. "Iris, I know I was wrong. Can't you give me another chance? I swear, if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't make the same mistakes." Hearing that, my heart grew cold with certainty. He had been sent back in time, too. I didn't want to waste another word on him. All I could think about was Ryan's injury. Back in the car, the healer who had accompanied us quickly tended to his hand. Alas, silver wounds were far worse than they looked. Even after treatment, the wound refused to heal. It would take special herbs and 7 nights of moonlight baths before it could fully recover. When I saw his hand wrapped thickly in white bandages, my heart shattered. Tears spilled from my eyes uncontrollably. "Let's postpone the ceremony," I sobbed. "We can go back and wait until you're healed." However, Ryan reached out his uninjured hand, gently tapping my nose with a teasing smile. "Silly girl, why are you crying? I've waited for this day for too long," he said softly as he looked at me, his gaze steady and tender. "How could I give it up over a small wound? The moon goddess is watching us. We can't let her down." Hearing that, my tears flowed harder, but this time, they were tears of joy. I nodded heavily. Our bond ceremony went on as planned at the peak of Moon Goddess Mountain. Pure white moonlight flowers surrounded the sacred altar, and members of the pack lined both sides, candles in hand, standing in solemn silence to witness the holy moment. Under Alpha Amos's solemn blessing, Ryan and I exchanged vows. When he bent down and kissed me, the entire mountaintop erupted in thunderous cheers and howls. Music soared through the air, and the young werewolves danced around the bonfire, celebrating the union of their future Alpha and Luna. After the bond ceremony, Ryan and I went back to our new home. Moonlight lit up the yard outside, and a warm fire crackled inside. As I leaned against his shoulder and played with his long fingers, I then asked softly, "I've always wondered. Back then we barely crossed paths. Why were you so good to me?" Suddenly he smiled. "Who says we didn't have any history? Actually, I've fancied you for a long time." I looked up, surprised. "When I was young, my parents took me to your place. You were a little pup then, calling out for candy in that sweet, innocent voice. I thought, Moon Goddess, how could anyone be that adorable?" He paused. "After my parents died, I stopped going out much. But whenever you appeared, I would watch you. Watching you throw yourself at my brother made me ache and jealous." As it turned out, our fate had started that early. I asked, a little embarrassed, "What about those rumors about your health, the ones people whispered?" He let out a helpless laugh. "Those I let slip myself. I didn't want to get dragged into a fight with Glenn too soon." Showing weakness made him drop his guard, and it let me protect myself better. Then he leaned in close, nuzzling my ear with his lips. "If you don't believe me, we have the whole night to find out." A few months later, I was pregnant. Alpha Amos officially handed the pack to Ryan, then passed away peacefully, returning to the moon goddess's embrace. Under Ryan's rule, the pack grew stronger every day. As for the people who'd hurt me, each met their deserved end. After Glenn abandoned Fawn, she lost it. She escaped the sanatorium and was never seen again, while Glenn himself became a shell of himself, drinking away what was left of him, the fire gone from his eyes. One afternoon, while Ryan was in the council hall handling pack affairs. I was sunning myself alone in the garden when Glenn appeared out of nowhere. He was unshaven and reeked of alcohol. "Iris," he slurred, a foolish smile on his face. "Do you know? I'm actually your mate. In our last life, we were mates, and we were very happy." I looked at him like he was a clown. "Happy?" I asked. "And then what happened to me?" He blinked, then babbled. "We grew old together, had kids and grandkids." I looked at him coldly, exposing his lies. If someone lies enough, do they start to believe their own lies? Or was it your mistress who poisoned my unborn pup with wolfsbane, and then I killed myself because I couldn't bear the shame? Color drained from his face. He stumbled back, terrified. How would you know?" "I know. It's because you've been sent back in time too. No wonder you chose Ryan." The terror on his face shifted in an instant to sudden realization, only to be hit with overwhelming regret and rage. I ignored him, and made my way back into the house. He tried to speak, but before he could, Gamma guards, alerted by the commotion, dragged him toward the gate. Then out of a street corner, a figure lunged. It was Fawn. She had a silver dagger in her hand. Before Glenn could react, she drove it into his heart. He looked down in disbelief at the blood spreading over his chest, looked at her, and slowly collapsed. When Glenn breathed his last, Fawn pulled the dagger free and, without hesitation, plunged it into her own heart. Blood splattered all about as she fell into Glenn's arms, a satisfied smile on her lips. "Glenn, if we can't be together alive, then in death we can be," she breathed. I watched the bloody scene with complete calmness. After calling the Gamma warriors and telling them to secure the scene, I went back inside and closed the door. Outside lay the grudges of my past life, and inside waited the brand new life that was finally mine.